All right, hello. Welcome to the Beyond the Walls podcast, your safe haven for anything spooky, paranormal, creepy, or just downright weird. I'm your host that has seen a few ghosts, Fred, here with my lovely assistant, Sarah.
Hello. So for those of you that are not super interested in podcasts, you joined us for the investigations, you should still maybe pay attention to the podcast here. We're going to be talking about something that can have a lot to do with investigations and actually could be something that you come across that's not spoken of very often. So highly suggest that you stick around at least for a little bit of the discussion.
But before we get into that, we're going to introduce our good friend. He's been on one investigation with us when we went to Burlington County Jail back in the fall time?
Yeah.
Sometime fall-ish?
Yeah,
and
somewhere in there.
He's going to be coming with us to Pennhurst when we go back, so he's on the fence about being skeptic, but after Pennhurst, he's not going to be.
Yeah. This is Brian.
Hi, everybody.
So before we officially jump in, Brian, I'm going to interview you briefly. We want to get to know you, so the people watching get to know you. What's your interest in the paranormal and cryptozoology?
I think that my interests lie more with the cryptozoology than the paranormal. I mean, I know that they're almost the same thing, but I'm less skeptical about the cryptids than I am about a ghost. So the paranormal, I always find it interesting, just to learn about it.
And tell us a little bit, because we sort of let you pick this topic. We were toying around with different things, but what led you to the tulpa?
This is one of those things that, if it's a real thing, it kind of covers almost every other possible explanation for a cryptid that you can think of, almost, And plus, like you said, it's not something that people talk about too much.
Yeah.
When I first learned about it, I was on a TV show, and I'm like, oh, what's that? So I started looking into it a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool concept.
Before we keep going, we should define, you clicked on the video, we're talking about tulpas. So what exactly is a tulpa?
So it's pretty much a thought form that's brought to reality by it's almost like a collective mind. The best example that I can come up with is Slender Man, and that's the first connection to another supernatural creature. The story. So from what my thoughts and from what I've looked, Slender Man came first, the story that was written. And then because everybody kind of bought into it, and I'm not saying that they really thought that it was real. I'm sure there are people that do.
There were.
But
yeah.
I think that just that mental energy that went into kind of defining a really creepy Jack Skellington, that's what it created it.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you being a hopeful skeptic in the paranormal world, isn't it kind of ironic though to think, okay, your thoughts can create something, and if enough people put that energy behind it, it can actually manifest. So from a paranormal investigator standpoint, couldn't that in turn, if you're on an investigation and you hear, oh, there's a grumpy old man that always attacks people down here, and then you have another team come in and they're all trying to talk to the grump, doesn't it kind of intertwine?
Yeah, it definitely could. And then you've got, just not even a supernatural thing, just the general, it's almost like playing a game of telephone, You've got this somebody investigated this area and this happened, but then you tell one person and then that group, it changes a little bit,
Like a valley.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I guess, figure out if whatever it is you're investigating or dealing with, came about. It's probably hard to tell, if it's the real thing or if it's, the tulpa that's been created by, so many people believing in it.
Absolutely. I have to ask you something, Brian, because just so the audience knows, you live pretty much right on the edge of the Pine Barrens. Like,
yeah, actually, my backyard is part of the Pine Barrens. So whenever we have 3 dogs and our yard's fenced in, but whenever I let one of the dogs outside, he's always the last one to come in. He's just being nosy and taking his time. So I always joke. I'm like, did you and the Jersey Devil, did you guys get caught up on your day?
Well, the Jersey Devil, I mean, it's almost 300 years old now when the sightings began. I think it was like 1735 was the first sighting recorded. So couldn't that in essence be a tulpa as well?
Sure.
It's interesting because there's so many things that could be considered, tulpa in a way. How many places have we been to where they're like, oh, like I think you mentioned earlier about this old guy being in the basement. That's kind of a dick, and lady walks down the street like, in a white dress. Like, there's so many parallels to tulpa versus anything in the paranormal field. It's
the lady in the white
sketchy
dress thing. There's so many roads in America where they're like, this road, there's a lady in a white dress that has been seen.
Yeah, because enough kids will go to that location being like, oh, I want to see the woman in white. Like, how many teenagers, when, or people our age or whatever, when they were younger,
right,
like, oh, the legend of Clinton Road, for example. They easily could have gone so many times. So many teenagers over the years could have just manifested something. So it's kind of difficult to tell the difference now.
Brian, was there anywhere when you were younger that you decided to just go adventure and see if you could see something?
Yeah, there's an area, and I want to say its names in the South are a little odd, but it's called Blue Lick. We did a road trip, and there was a bridge, and I feel like this is the type of thing that's in every state, or like a lot of them.
Bridge,
it's called.
Right?
You got it.
Yep.
We didn't experience anything, but like we went under the bridge, and there's like this little ledge that you can kind of hang off of or whatever, and we went at night, and nothing happened.
So I wanted to talk about something. I don't know, in your wormhole, Brian, that you were in, you were trying to avoid the other night.
Yeah.
Did you come across a study that was done in 1972 by these Canadian parapsychologists?
No.
Well, actually, I found I was in a wormhole too, but there was actually this parapsychologist. His name was Dr. A.R.G. Those are all like capitals, Owen, and he was sort of basing this off of like a mixture of poltergeist and thought forms. So it wasn't like he was like, I want to create a tulpa. He was like, what can we do with our own energy type thing? And they took a bunch of people that didn't have any type of, medium or psychic abilities or anything. And for a year, they brought these people into a room and they talked about this person named Philip that they were trying to create. Well, after a year, nothing happened, but he was still convinced that there was more to it. So what they started doing was bringing into the group trigger objects, things that they've decided that Philip would enjoy, certain music that he would like, certain things he would like to play with or whatever, and they got more personal. Then they started to get responses. Do you want us to put the music back on? Knock once for yes, twice for no. Then they were getting responses. So it seemed like when they tied in more emotional energy to what they were doing, that actually worked.
Well, from what I saw, I mean, that makes sense because it's not just thoughts, it's like emotional energy too. It's almost like everything that I've learned and read, like with magic or the supernatural or whatever, it's intent as well.
Yes.
Like you definitely. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, what is it made of? And a lot of people think that, then you get into the astral plane, and then you get into like where the energy of like dreams come from and stuff like that. So, and so that's when I stopped myself next to the table.
Astral plane.
And then that's just the whole
Insidious and all those movies coming into play.
Right.
Speaking of movies, That what was it called? Philip Experiment. They made a movie based around it called The Quiet Ones. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
No, it did pop up on one of the links that I could have clicked on, and it pretty much, from what I read, it came from like Buddhist tantras, so which pretty much try and help you visualize. And this is the weird part, like Buddha and the different deities of the different religions.
Okay, interesting.
It's like, okay, well, if you're doing that, then, you know, if you go back to like Greek and all those different religions with the Greek pantheon and stuff like that, you know, I think that was just storytelling to some degree, because they were trying to explain how the world worked.
Right.
And then, but I think that's all sort of connected in a way, if this is like a thing.
It makes sense. Any religious figure or even mythological creature.
The main thing that I found, this guy's name was William Walker Atkins. He was an occultist, but he wrote a book called The Human Aura. He pretty much just said that he thought that he didn't specifically call them tulpas, but he called them thought forms.
Yeah, it's crazy though, because if you think about it, you know, and it's good talking to you as a skeptic, because even poltergeist activity is, a lot of people don't realize this. They think of the movie or something and they're like, oh, there's a poltergeist in my house. But that's supposed to be your own energy, generally negative, you know, if you have some traumas or whatever, being projected outward, and you're, you know, unintentionally moving things. And again, it's like your own energy doing something, but it's not an intelligence.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
So,
it's
but
just
it's
a
connected.
reaction.
It's almost like, you know, whether it's your auric field or your energy or manifesting something with your mind, it's kind of all the same thing, just done in
So to me, it's like you've almost got a tulpa, but you haven't quite gotten past that energy threshold or whatever.
Yeah. I'm glad that you picked this subject, because it's kind of going to make me rethink some things on our investigations too. I want to say one more thing quick. Brian, you might remember Sylvia Brown.
You were telling me about this.
Yeah, like she used to be, for those of you that don't know, she used to be on Montel Williams all the time. They were like, you know.
It's finale week and it's Wednesday, so it must be farewell to Sylvia Brown. She's been a friend of the show and to myself for the last 17 years, and every time she's here, the audience goes crazy. Very special guest, Sylvia Brown.
What kind of job would I be getting in about a year?
Best buds, and she'd come on and do readings for the audience and all different kinds of stuff and everything. And I don't remember this from the time period, but I do follow her son on Instagram, and he'll put little clips of her up from back in the 90s. And she was talking about tulpas on one of his talk shows, and you know, Montel was like, what's a tulpa? And she said, well, like, for instance, the Loch Ness Monster, that's a tulpa. She said that, you know, everybody's looking for this small-headed, long-necked, you know, water beast, and over time, you've got a tulpa. So I thought that was really interesting.
I don't think, from what I've read, if it is real, if it's legit, like, it's not just a one-person thing. It's so hard to, like, pinpoint, like, what could be a tulpa, because it's like, what's the real deal?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, is there really a Loch Ness Monster, or is it just a thing that people created because they all believed in it?
Right.
And with the advent of technology and the internet, the whole Slender Man example, I mean, if you're going to look at one example of, like, what it could do, like, you know, what could create a tulpa, and, like, you know, that would for me, that would be it.
Yeah, the list goes on and on, literally. It goes on, and you know, you could say that, like, about almost anything.
Exactly. You could do that with, like, you know, godlike figures. You could do that with folklore characters.
Yeah.
Cryptid, ghosts, paranormal stuff.
Deities, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting topic. I'm glad that you chose this one.
This was cool.
This was really neat. Well, let's hope that you get to experience one of these times with us.
So we're going to wrap this one up. Everybody, thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. At this point, we would have gone to Waldorf, so stay tuned for that from 2 weeks from today. We'll have, you know, Hell House episode. Really excited. Brian, thank you for joining us. This was fun.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you all for watching.
Mm.